Right, hi. Today we're going to be doing a sirloin from Greenfields, which is grass-fed. We're going to be cutting that, then seasoning the board, seasoning the steak, and then putting it onto the Weber and cooking that to perfection. What we have here is a prime piece of sirloin, which is from Greenfields in Moy River. That is beautifully grass-fed. It's aged for about 40 days. And I'm just going to take it out the vacuum bag. As you can see, it's in a vacuum. We're going to break the seal of the bag. Now we get that first whiff of air as we open the vacuum bag. That's known as a fart. I'm not joking. And that just tells us that this beef is ready, perfectly aged. But that's the best part of it. Understanding the beautiful flavor as it develops in the vacuum bag. We then take it out. Unfortunately, losing a bit of meat juice in that process. Next, we're going to go on to the cutting of the meat. As you can see, the sirloin has a beautiful layer of fat on the top there. We have the classification stamp running right the way through it, and this is going to be fantastic. So let's get down to the cutting. And there we have it. First bit of Greenfield sirloin, bit of intramuscular fat there. That's known as marbling or intramuscular fat. Very, very important. That's going to melt in the grilling process, giving us beautiful juice and flavor, because we really believe that muscle plus fat equals flavor. So let's take that now, put it into a rub. But first thing we're going to do is season the board. So here we go with a handful of our local grill rub. Just a blend of herbs and spices. There's oregano, paprika, coriander, mustard seed, thyme, some coarse salt, freeze-dried onion, and so the board is seasoned. I put the rub down on the board just like that, quite simply. We then put the meat on top, another bit of rub on top of the meat, and what we're going to do is just tap it in so it sticks to our lacquer sirloin. Wrap it all over, just give it a little, press into the spice mix, and there we go, ready to cook. A good point to remember is letting your meat get to as close to room temperature as possible, not to shock it as it gets on that very hot fire. And while we're mentioning a hot fire, make sure your fire is exceptionally hot. We want the benefit of the heat. Rather turn more often than have a cold fire that's going to literally let that meat juices boil away. We want to get that high intense heat to get the browning surface on the outside of the meat. That's called the Maillard process. That browning gives us huge flavor. So make sure your fire is nice and hot and your beef is brought as near to room temperature as possible. So not straight from the fridge, definitely not straight from the freezer, but at room temperature, it really is going to cook that much better. Even though we have the intramuscular fat, we're going to be putting the sirloin with dry rub onto a very hot, dry fire. So it's important for us to give it a bit of moisture. Now that can come either from an olive oil or from butter, but I think today we're going to use butter to give it that very natural combination of flavors between the blend of herbs and spices called the rub, and then obviously the butter to give it that little bit extra. So let's put that onto the fire. Now we're going to just do our first little dash of butter. This is melted butter that we're using, salted butter preferably, because we don't mind that extra bit of salt. And then we just give the steak a little dab. And I'm going to attempt to turn the sirloin more often than most of you are used to, between 15 and 20 seconds, because we want to get it brown nice and evenly. I don't want to let the rub burn, so let me give it a turn. I'll give you another dab of butter. Notice I'm not brushing it because I don't want to brush off the herbs and spices, the rub. And there we go. We're almost ready for the next turn. This time I'm going to change the direction of the lines on the grid because I want to change those markings. So not like railway lines, rather crisscross. And that'll give me an indication of how many times the steak has been turned. So every time we vary the directions of the grid, we're able to pick up how many times that steak has been turned. Now would be a good moment to give it another dab of butter. We don't mind the lovely flavor. All right, we're on about 15 seconds. Let's turn it over. Change the directions. As you see, those lines crisscross. We want to try and achieve that. Once more, a little dab of butter. We do like to close the lid to keep the flavor and the heat inside. So let's just give it those moments just to start building up heat inside the Weber. Lastly, we're going to just let it brown nicely on the fat. I like to put the fat side up. Give it a little bit of browning. Put the fat down just to get that nice and crispy. You can see how beautifully that fat is now crisping up there, and we should be ready to go. All right, let's put our meat onto our board. There we go. Isn't that amazing? Here's our Greenfield sirloin, bride to perfection, lovely and rare. We're going to cut that shortly. First, we need to let it rest. Let's let it stand for about 30 seconds. That's just to make sure that the intramuscular juices don't run out as we cut that meat. So we want the fibers to actually start to contract again as it chills a little bit, and then we're going to slice it. You will also notice that on the board where we've cut, there's not a lot of meat juices running out there. That's because we've allowed this beef ample time to rest. Fantastic. Medium rare, Greenfield sirloin, rubbed, grilled to perfection.